everyone. Good to be with you, and thank you for the happy anniversary, Cosmodium. Yeah, 10 years. Crazy, right? I obviously haven't been here for the whole 10 years, but yes, it was 10 years since Jan set up his audio empire. I think that's what Imperial means, empires. So yeah, and it's gone from strength to strength since then. And now we're celebrating 10 years with this big sale with these bundles, which is very exciting. I think it's a great way to get involved with Audio Imperial stuff if you haven't before, or if you have some stuff but want some more. There's some great bundles and things. So yeah, it's hey Adrian, how are you doing? It's really cool. Check it out. We have a link in the description if you do want to see. And of course, the theme of today's stream, well, is ultimately about composition. We always want to make things about making music, but we're going to be making music with what is called our starter collection, which is a bundle of 6 libraries, and our course, the Modern Composer Blueprint, which we'll talk a bit more about. For an insane price, to be completely honest. It's a really good price for all the different libraries. I wrote a demo track for it. Today we're going to break down that demo track, and we're going to go a deeper dive. You know, usually we write something or we have a piano sketch and we turn it into a mock-up over 2 hours or so. Today the track's already done, it's all completely written, so today is going to be more about exploring how it was put together, do a bit more of a deeper dive, answer some questions. If you guys have any questions, as always, feel free to ask them, whether it's about the libraries, whether it's about the track. But I want to do a deeper dive today and talk in particular about how you maybe arrange, orchestrate, you know, kind of put these things together, maybe try and mix and master them a bit as well. Some of the, you know, hybrid music techniques. Thank you guys. Thank you, Kaya. Thank you, Peter. Yeah, 10 years. Crazy stuff. Yes, when did I join? Like 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago? But there was a long history before then, obviously involving all kinds of crazy, amazing libraries like NUCLEUS and Chorus and a bunch of other stuff as well. Next week about flagship collection, maybe we shall have a see. I'm not sure what we're going to do next week, but that's definitely a possibility. And there will certainly be more content as we go for the next few weeks on all these different collections, what they offer, what they can do. As I say, this is the starter collection today, but to be honest, it's a little bit misleadingly named because it's not a starter collection. Well, what it is, if you don't have anything, it's a great starter collection, but it's not starter in the sense that it's just a few little bits and pieces. This is a whole bunch of different stuff. In fact, why don't I just change through the magic of OBS wizardry? Why don't I change to this? Here we go. So this is what's on offer in our starter bundle. We've got NUCLEUS, the orchestral core, our big flagship library, a great all-in-one scoring orchestra. We've then got Solo, which is a bunch of incredible lyrical expressive soloists. CERBERUS, which is just basically mad crazy drums, exactly what you want for kind of modern hybrid stuff, but also has a range of other uses too. ARTIFACT REANIMATE, which is a bunch of great sound design if you're doing trailers or epic hybrid music, or you just want a whole bunch of really cool stuff that you can layer into tracks. PHOTOSYNTHESIS, which is a great collection of, I mean, what's in there? Soundscapes, pads, some synths, some organic cellos and things like that, you know, the textures and stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. It's an absolute treasure trove of things. And then we also have KLAVIER as well, which is our essentially kind of modern hybrid pianos. There's a real piano in them, but they also have hybrid textures and things. Great if you're doing hybrid or modern music, or if you're into trailer stuff, that kind of stuff as well. I finally get to join. Hey Ultima, thank you for joining us. Yes, it's great. I mean, it's so good to have all you guys with us. I think it's going to be a fun one today. As I said, this is about our starter bundle, but ultimately it's going to be about writing music. And if you've ever wanted to do kind of epic hybrid music, or maybe trailer stuff, this isn't a trailer track, but it probably a lot of what's happening in this may be applicable in some ways to trailer music as well. If you've ever wanted to do that kind of stuff, hopefully this will give you some good pointers today. And as I say, whereas sometimes we write and we just kind of sketch out quickly a mock-up that we've made, this week we're looking at an original track and we're going deeper into it. So we'll spend a bit more time looking at each layer, really why each decision's made, how we put an epic hybrid track together, an epic hybrid track together, and some of the modern production techniques as well, which are important in hybrid music. In other types of music, you know, maybe not so much, but in hybrid music, to really get the sound, you're going to have to use some of the techniques. What are your go-tos and also Audio Imperial favorites? Photosynthesis is so amazing. What are my go-tos? Yeah, I mean, I still love NUCLEUS. You know, I don't know how I say it like that. I mean, it's a well-loved library and for good reasons, but I just think you can get so much done with NUCLEUS. It's a smaller library. It doesn't have as many articulations as a lot of other libraries, but that's kind of by design. It's all about getting things done quickly and efficiently, but still to a very high level. And I hope that this track will display today why NUCLEUS is a great option as an orchestral library, particularly if you're doing modern hybrid stuff, you know, where it just sits so well in the mix. It works so brilliantly. Yeah, so NUCLEUS is definitely one of my, I mean, Chorus, I always go to Chorus as just, I think it's kind of best in class for choirs. As I say, you know, for some very specialist things, you might want other libraries, but I think if you just want the choir library that will just get you going each and every time, you know, last week we did Lord of the Rings, you know, and it was great for that, but this week we've used it in a completely different way. And it's great too. We've used the NUCLEUS choirs in this, actually. We haven't used Chorus. I'm just remembering, we don't have Chorus used for this, but every time I use it, it works. It's the point I'm trying to make. It's very, very rare that I go to something else. So Chorus is great. Yeah, photosynthesis has a load of good stuff, and we've used a lot of photosynthesis today. I'm trying to think what else. I mean, I love Dolce. I think Dolce is great. I just the sound of it, there's some magic in Dolce that I can't describe. You know, it's just got some, the way it's been put together, the sort of the feel of the you know, the way the strings are being played. It's just a really unique library. I'm always layering it into stuff. Dolce, you know, sometimes I'll use Araya or NUCLEUS or Jaeger strings, but then I'll just want a moment that's more lyrical or has more kind of emotional impact. Dolce does it every time. Or Dolce Light, also another great option too. There's just so much you can get done with NUCLEUS if you know what to do with it. 100%. I just think it's great, NUCLEUS. You know, and I say this, I wasn't here when NUCLEUS was made, so this is an unbiased. Before I joined Audio Imperial, I was lucky enough to become part of the team. I owned NUCLEUS. I was a paying customer of NUCLEUS. And in fact, doing demos with NUCLEUS was what eventually led me to meet with Jan and get involved with the team. But I just love the sound of it. I just think it's such a great sounding library. Yeah, NUCLEUS is incredible. I think you know, if you want an all-in-one, cohesive, coherent, recorded in one space thing that sounds great, that works together pretty much out of the box, NUCLEUS is a great option. And hey, with the starter collection, I mean, you get 5 other libraries in there as well, which handle all other different elements of things. I think I'll begin the flagship collection, but it's a hard decision. You can't go wrong with whatever you get, in my opinion. I mean, it's all tremendously discounted stuff to celebrate our 10 years. You know, so you get great deal whichever collection you go for. It's a really great way to get, you know, some of the libraries, all of the libraries, whatever you want, really. So yeah, maybe we'll, you know, we probably will look at the flagship collection in some detail at some point. There will be other videos, there will be other content, there will be other opportunities to explore these things as well. But today we're going to look at the starter bundle. Array and Dolce is the sweet spot. I agree. Yeah, I use that combination a lot, you know, and I really love the sound of it. Array is transparent and it's got this beautiful cinematic, modern cinematic quality. Dolce just has this lovely old school emotional kind of, you know, it's almost like this tragic sound in a way, but in a good way. I mean, it's like, it has this beautiful kind of sonorous aching quality. Two together, you can't go wrong. I think you're absolutely right there. Ultima Nova, it's an incredible combination. And the same, you can use NUCLEUS, you can use, you know, Jaeger. They have sort of similar sound profiles. They're not quite as detailed as Araya in terms of number of articulations. But yeah, they all blend well, really well together. Artifact is lesser known. Can you please let us know what you use it for? Definitely. Cosmodium, we're going to look at sort of pretty much every track today. We're really going to break this down. Unlike other streams where we maybe have to run through things a bit quicker, today we're really going to break things down. It's going to be a great opportunity for you guys to see how each library is being used. And we've used all of them. We have, full disclaimer, because I want to be honest with you guys, we've used a couple of free synths in this as well. I'll explain why as we go through, but you know, it's almost all starter collection and then a couple of literal, the most basic synths you could do with any stock synth whatsoever. I'm using Vital, which is a free synth. You could use Retrolog if you've got Cubase. You could use anything in Logic. You could use Operator if you're unable to. It's literally the most bog standard synth stuff. But because we're talking about hybrid music techniques, I'll explain why, and you'll see how it marries up with the rest of the starter collection. Also, by the way, guys, I'm going to make the MIDI for this available in our Discord. So if you're not part of the Discord, do join. The MIDI will be made available for you guys. So if you own the starter collection, you can see all the instruments I've used. You can pretty much, you know, link it up to your starter collection, and you can then have fun, whatever you want to do with it. Cut it up, remix it, you know, change it around. Do a better job of mixing it than I do, which is pretty easy because I'm not the best mixer. Is there also the newsletter offers? Do you know when they're coming to us? I'm not 100% sure about that, Cosmodium. Hopefully some of the other guys will be in at some point soon, so they're going to be able to answer some of the more offer collections. Native Instruments just released a player version to Mass Effect. Looks intriguing. Yeah, I did see about this. It was posted up by one of our team members. Yeah, really interesting. Really, really interesting. Some great stuff out there. As I said, we used a free synth today. You'll see why. I have my reasons, but it works so well with the starter collection and with hybrid music in general. So maybe we will, I'm trying to think if there's any other housekeeping we need to do. Obviously, crafting the score is still very much available. We talked about this last week, orchestration, incredible course delivered by an incredible guy, Tristan Noon. It's a great course on orchestration, working with orchestras, working at sessions for media. If you guys are, really want to take composing, to the next level and explore what you can, do with media composing, it's a great course. It offers you a lot of extra skills, in terms of working with live musicians and working with, orchestras and in sessions and stuff. It's a great course, well worth checking out. And I think it's still an introductory price offer. So you can go over to the page. It's linked in the description. All of that will be, available still, but we've got so much going on at the moment. I mean, it's hard to keep up. We've got the anniversary stuff. We've got the crafting the score stuff. It's all going kind of haywire, but in a good way. I'm just going to cough a second. I have a cough brewing. I'm going to mute my mic so you guys don't have to hear this. There. I thought, you don't just want to hear me coughing up inside of the mic, so I muted it. Hopefully that will be the one and done. I still have yet to use KLAVIER, but I really should try it. It's a very peculiar piano. It is. It's a really interesting one. So it's a very modern, quite bright grand piano, but then it's layered with a lot of cool sound design. If you've ever heard, if you guys like trailer music, almost, not all trailers, but a lot of trailers start with the like bing, the high piano note. I can probably do this one because I'm sure I've got one loaded up. Something like that, By the way, it's going to be louder today than usual. I'll explain why, because I've sort of mixed and mastered this. But if KLAVIER is great for that, and it's got a whole bunch of different sounds that you can layer in with the piano, and a very intuitive system for layering them in. So it's just great at getting these modern hybrid piano sounds going almost instantly. It's a really great option. So it comes with the bundle. So you have a piano along with NUCLEUS, along with solo, which is great if you want the more emotional stuff. The pings, exactly. It's just great for pings. Instant pings. And that's just, I think we've got a little extra reverb on there, but that's just pretty much KLAVIER out of the box, I think. Okay, I think that's all the housekeeping done. I'm sure if there's anything I've missed, one of the other guys will be on to remind me. But today we're going to do a deeper dive into this track. We're going to be talking about how to make hybrid music. And this applies to trailer music as well. This is not a trailer music track. It's structured quite differently and approached quite differently, but a lot of modern techniques that are really useful to know if you want to make hybrid music, epic music. If you want to get into the trailer world, some of this stuff will be useful. Still my go-to when I write music. Absolutely amazed by these sounds. Perfect for symphonic metal stuff. Well done, all of you. Yeah, it's an interesting thing because hybrid music is really the blending of different types of music, right? It's like orchestral elements, but you may have synths, you may have percussion, you may have guitars, and so on. I think it's absolutely true. Audio Imperia's stuff is incredible when it's blended, when it's part of a dense arrangement, which epic music often is, or trailer music often is. Things like NUCLEUS and Jaeger just cut through mixes like nothing else. And you're going to see that today. So I agree, for something like symphonic metal, I think it's going to work. So when you've got busy guitars and big rumbling bass and huge drums and things, you need an orchestra that kind of layers over the top and kind of cuts through. And NUCLEUS or Jaeger do that brilliantly. Okay, let's move over. We'll listen to the track and then we will begin breaking it down. And we're going to go, as I say, a bit deeper today than we normally do. Cool. So here is my project file. This is, as you can see, all stuff from our starter bundle. So all NUCLEUS strings up here. We do have some solo cello stuff. That's from NUCLEUS too. We then have NUCLEUS brass. We have a tiny bit of solo French horn. You'll see how that's being used. We have the NUCLEUS choir. We have the two soloists, soprano soloists from solo. We don't have Marette because she's part of Jaeger. We have orchestral percussion, all NUCLEUS. We have some CERBERUS epic percussion here. We have some ARTIFACT REANIMATE hits going on as well, and some kits, which are really useful. We've got some NUCLEUS subs. We've got some NUCLEUS pitch percussion, things like harp and celeste and so on. We have a lot of photosynthesis here layered up, and you're going to see this looks very busy, but you're going to see how we try to refine as much as possible what each instrument does in the mix. We have a couple of vital subs. That's really all the bass is, the free synths are doing is sort of sub bass and mid bass stuff. We've got KLAVIER, and then we've got some effects all from ARTIFACT REANIMATE. Jaeger versus NUCLEUS are many times confused. So the best way to think about it, there's some overlap in the strings and the brass, which is why we have cross grades between the two, because there is some overlap there. Jaeger has a little bit more detail in terms of it has more articulations for strings and brass, and it veers them much more on the sound design side of things. So it has some extra percussion. It has a lot of different sound design, pings and downers and booms and risers and goodness knows what else, and some other cool sound design. It has obviously the beautiful Moretti solo voice too. So it's much more about, if you're doing really hybrid or trailer-like stuff, Jaeger caters more in that direction slightly. There is then some overlap with NUCLEUS, and NUCLEUS then veers off in the orchestral direction. So it's got woodwinds, which Jaeger doesn't have. It's got some pitch percussion and some orchestral percussion that Jaeger has a little bit of, not the pitch percussion, but the orchestral percussion. But it's much more about traditional symphonic scoring. As I said, there is an overlap, and they're both capable of doing similar things, but they do lean in slightly different directions. Jaeger, much more sound design focused, much more about modern hybrid orchestra. NUCLEUS, orchestral core. It's much more about sort of symphonic scoring, film scoring, stuff like that. And then in the middle, you have this kind of overlap where if you have both libraries, there will be some overlap between them. Hey, Ollie's with us. Yeah, so as we go through, as I said, if there's any questions, feel free to ask. Now, someone did alert me on the Discord that the music is sometimes a bit quiet. So generally speaking, for future streams, I'll be turning it up so it's louder in relation to my voice. This is going to be particularly loud today because this is kind of mixed and mastered. Well, it is mixed and mastered, so it's a louder mix than most. So I'm going to play this. If it's blowing anybody's ears off, let me know and I'll turn it down or do something. But hopefully it's going to not be too bad. But it's definitely going to be louder than usual. So here we go. Here's the track. It's called Ad Astra, and it's all written with the Starter Collection. It's a modern epic hybrid sort of thing. So there we go, all made with the Starter Collection, and as I say, a couple of free synths, which are doing a pretty minimal but important role. But yeah, all of this stuff, Starter Collection. Sadly, I do not come as part of the bundle. I do not, maybe for the 20th anniversary. Almost going to be Joanna Pena vibes. Yes, thank you very much. I mean, I will gladly take, yes, that's true. And Joanna, of course, was the sound designer for Photosynthesis, did an incredible job. I love the movie Ad Astra. Score is amazing. Score by Max Richter, one of my favorite composers. This track bangs. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So yeah, we're going to do a deeper dive today. I wish there was an Adam Harvey bundle. Ooh, I don't know that would be that great, to be honest. Yeah, maybe a little bit of me bundled, but the whole thing, I don't think anybody wants that. But yeah, so where do we begin with this? I'm trying to think really what we do. I mean, compositionally, it's pretty straightforward as we go through, or maybe talk about some of the harmony and choices and things. But today I want to focus more on kind of how do you get the hybrid sound, because you have to do quite a lot to get it, but at the same time, it's based very often on simplicity. It's not so much that there's a lot of very obvious things going on, very basic idea, but then there's a lot of ear candy and bits and pieces going on. Hey there, Richie. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. So there's you know, a lot going on in this track, but it's got to be more kind of manicured than usual. You know, in traditional orchestral scoring, you can be a bit messier or you can be a bit more organic because the orchestra's, you know, playing together, it's all designed to work as one thing. With hybrid music, you're jamming a lot of things together that maybe don't necessarily live perfectly well together, and you have to find a way to fit it all. Hey, Adam, I'm the Alien main title mock-up guy. Hello, Richie. Well, thank you for joining us. That's great. That was a really, really cool video, by the way. It sounded incredible. And I love Alien. And I think you've inspired us to do an Alien stream at some point. I'm not sure when, but I would love to do some Alien or Aliens. Horner or Goldsmith, either work for me. So maybe we'll start by going through and taking a look at some of the orchestral elements. And by the way, guys, please, this is one of those sort of streams where I just want you guys to ask questions, tell me to go back to things. If you don't understand something, if you want to look at something in more detail, we really want to go deep dive and give you guys, you know, some ideas and techniques and thoughts about how to put music like this together. Hey, no problem, Richie. It was really, really cool. So yeah, if you've got any questions, feel free to ask. Let's maybe take a look at let's maybe go through this bit by bit, and then we'll just section by section unpack how we've done it. So let's listen to the first section up to the build-up. There we go. So it's starting off pretty minimal. We're starting with some pads, basically. So we have these pads, one from NUCLEUS, because NUCLEUS has pads as well. And this one from PHOTOSYNTHESIS called Distances Unknowable. Hey, Dwayne, thanks for joining us. And yes, we're live pretty much every Tuesday now. So yeah, we will be covering all manner of different things. This week we're covering this epic music track and how it was written using our starter collection. But thank you for joining us. So yeah, we're starting with these two basic pads. Pretty straightforward stuff. And then to give this a bit more of a sound design kind of intro, we have some whooshes inside of ARTIFACT REANIMATE, just waiting for this to save a second. And I've taken one of those whooshes, I've exported it to audio, and I played around with it. I don't actually think I've done too much in terms of mixing. No, I put a bit of reverb on there and I put a bit of EQ. I have done a fair bit of mixing to this track, and we'll go through all that as we go through. But basically all I've done is probably just taken out some of the rumble. Let's take a look. Yeah, so I've really narrowed down just the area I want. This is going to be a running theme in hybrid music. Orchestral music, you tend to do minimal EQ, just carving tiny bits out here and there that you maybe don't like or that are conflicting. Hybrid music, especially when it comes to the synths and sound design, you may really be what we call pocketing the EQ, really narrowing just bits and pieces of the sound spectrum frequency that you want. So I've just taken this. So it's almost like a wind sound effect. And together, they sort of work to create this quite ambient, sort of ambiguous opening. And this is just a nice kind of wind sound effect because it has that kind of sound. It's like a transition element almost into that first bit. So nice and simple stuff going on there. As you can see, that synth carries on, just gently picking stuff out. The next thing that we have is a combination of some vital basses. So this simple sub bass. And you'll see the free synth is doing the most basic thing in the world. It's literally just two oscillators and a filter. It's just one of the most basic synths you could hope for, like a nice big deep sub. That is being mixed with a mid bass, and we'll talk a little bit about what we mean when we say sub bass and mid bass. Let me play the mid in isolation. You'll hear this is much more mid-range focus. So we have a nice big deep sub and then a mid-range. And then we finally have this dark bass. I like the bass. There's some basses in photosynthesis as well. This is one of the basses, dark bass, and it's adding a kind of organic quality. I love the combination of organic stuff or stuff that's recorded, you know, real things, if you like, with subs and synths, you know, synthetic elements. So it's almost like you have the synthetic element, but then you have this nice sort of, you know, organic nature on top of it all together. Each thing providing something quite, you know, important. This is providing that kind of synthy thwack in the mid to top. This is providing this organic, nice sort of resonant, almost amp style sort of sound. And then to get some nice low end bass, simple sub. Are you more aggressive with the EQ with orchestral instruments as well in hybrid music? Good question. Yes, but not as much, as you'll see. You have to be a little bit more aggressive because it has to fit in with everything else. But what I would say is that the orchestra, everyone knows what an orchestra sounds like, and it's one of the most well-crafted ensembles. You know, it is the most well-crafted ensemble. All those instruments have been designed over hundreds of years for very specific purposes. They all sound very distinctive. And so we don't want to too aggressively EQ it because we still want it to sound like an orchestra. And as you'll see, it still sounds like an orchestra. But yes, to get the percussion to fit, to get the synths to fit, we do have to do maybe a little bit more sound design and sculpting. But it's the least sculpted area of the track as we go through, you'll see, because I ultimately still want the orchestra to sound like an orchestra. And we have a reference. We all know what an orchestra sounds like, but a synth is a synthetic thing, right? Or, you know, a sound design layers we don't have the reference for that, right? I mean, we don't know what it's supposed to sound like, so we can be more aggressive there to make it fit. With an orchestra, we kind of want to keep the orchestral sound, but we did do some processing that you'll see. So we have this magma bass, really quiet. That's just providing a little bit of sustain, making sure that everything's glued together a bit. We don't want things to be too bop, 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 because it'll sound a little bit too kind of staccato. So it's really quiet in the background. It's adding some nice texture. And then we finally have up here, we have this really cool steady and ready kind of rhythmic effect that I found in photosynthesis. What I loved about this is that it's got this real nice kind of played organic quality. It's like someone's playing it, you know, it's got these really nice swells and things. So I think they all work nicely together, and together with everything, it sort of sounds like this. So it sounds pretty nice together, and it's just got this nice sort of good combination of it's got this solid foundation, but it's got some movement and texture in there to make sure it doesn't sound too lifeless. With hybrid music, with synth elements, you always want to get some movement in there, some sense that this is a living, breathing thing, I think. So the next thing I would do is put rhythm into this. We have a couple of things that are providing rhythm. We have these metals. So they're just providing this nice, almost clock-like sort of sound in the background. And then we also have, if I come up here, I'm sure we do have, yes, these processed clicks and clacks from CERBERUS. They're providing our faster rhythm. And as you can see down here, I've done some processing to these. So they have a bit of reverb. We have some transient designer. Transient designer basically lets you control the attack and the sustain of a sound. So if you have a sound that is too roomy and boomy or is too sustained, you can bring back the sustain, push the attack a bit and get more of a kind of direct transient sound to it. I use this a lot in hybrid music to get everything to fit and glue together and make sure you don't get too much boominess or muddiness. These just needed a bit of that. We got a bit of filter on them to filter out just some of the very top end. And then we also have this chopper as well, which is basically just adding a kind of rhythm to it. See how it just sort of makes it more direct. So these are processed clicks and clacks. And I think that's everything for the rhythm at this stage. We do also have, which is kind of rhythmic, these viola shorts, which are again processed to sound deliberately a little bit different. The rest of the orchestra sounds pretty organic. This sounds much more kind of deliberately kind of processed. Very quiet. So a bit more kind of in the background, but that combined with our clicks and then our metals provides the movement. So that's kind of the motor driving things forward. We have a good old-fashioned sub. This is a sub from NUCLEUS. Why a sub? Subs just sound good. A lot, again, hybrid music, trailer music has a lot of these kind of big sub booms and kind of kicks and things. So it sounds like this. To give that a little bit of a higher and more tonal element, we're layering a tubular bell from NUCLEUS. See, that just gives you almost like a kind of foreboding sound. Then we have this really high glockenspiel, which has been given a lot of reverb. So let me just show you what that sounds like. Just adds this kind of transient hit to the top. Really helps it cut through. Without and then with. We also have a couple more other elements going on here as well. Let me just see what else we have. I think it's just those things. Yeah, and then we have the whoosh that carries on as well. So that's really, and then we have, I think, a tiny bit of, yeah, this distorted hit, which is very, very quiet. What that's doing is providing a bit of the kind of punch, you know, with some of these hits, you want to layer them up in different ways. This is very, very boomy, but doesn't have much sort of transient material to it. This just works as a layer on top to kind of add a little bit of initial attack. See how it just helps it cut through more? Without it, it just sounds a bit flubby. Cool, but a bit flubby. This adds some top, and then combined with the glockenspiel and the tubular bells, it's like a nice hit, you know, it's just something that draws your attention right at the beginning. Glock adds a lot, it definitely does. Beautiful texture on that ping. Yeah, and I'm just using, let me just show you, I think I'm just using a shimmer. I like the Valhalla shimmer. Here it is. Yeah, it's my go-to. This adds a lot. There's actually a free shimmer inside of NUCLEUS now. There are free shimmer plugins if you want something that does something similar to this. And this one's not too expensive either. Without, much more traditional. With, it's like it's floating in the galaxy, right? I mean, the shimmer's great for that kind of stuff. And then that is actually working with, let's go to our next tonal element. Our pianos, our Gravitas pianos. This is the melody, essentially. A lot of epic music, and particularly trailer music, isn't that melodic. It's not like it has a really, really instant melody. It might just be a few kind of dramatic notes. That's exactly what's going on here. So we have this. And same thing here. This is being processed with some black hole, which is another kind of FX reverb, adds a lot of character. But there's also, if I take this black hole off, you'll see, and the delay, which is adding a bit more space. There's a lot baked in anyway. There's already a lot of atmosphere there. But to really make it fit in more. Hybrid music's usually about more, but kind of in a way that is transparent and doesn't clog up the arrangement. And then we have another piano, Gravitas again, doing a very different role. Just this really, really quiet bass element. The delay would also work for the Glock. Yeah, 100%, you could definitely do it. And sometimes if you want to create space or width, but you don't want to just keep using delays and making everything sound too muddy, you can just, using reverbs, you can just use a delay. And I think we might have done that at some point. I can't remember who did this in this mix or not, but using delay to just create more width without having to put reverb on everything and make it too washy. So I think that's every element that we have going on at the beginning here. We obviously also, of course, we have our beautiful solo soprano angelic voice, which is really providing the melody here as well. Really, really beautiful stuff. She turns up a lot in this arrangement, and then at the end she's joined by the other voice in solo, the solo operatic, and you'll hear how that sounds together. Great. I mean, it's really beautiful voice inside of solo. Yeah, so that's providing the main character. And I think, do we have something else going on here? Very, very, very quiet single sustained note on the violas. You can barely hear it, but it's one of those things a lot of the times in kind of dense arrangements like this, you can't really hear it in the mix. When you take it out, something leaves. It's just about there in the background. Hey, Solophonics. Thank you for joining us. So yeah, so we have all together everything working to create this. that's how we start the track. At this point, we have to start introducing some movement. So we have all the same stuff going on, but we add a new element, and that is this rich sweep from Photosynthesis. This is a beautiful synth. As you can see, I processed it quite a bit, but it's all pretty simple stuff. It's the transient thing again to give it a bit more pluck. Here, I'm really just sculpting out. I didn't want it to be too low because we have booms and things going on there. I didn't want it too high because we have some strings there. It was really just sitting in that mid-range. So just cleaned it up. That's all it's doing really. I'm using this M set, which is a free plugin, and it basically allows me to change the mid and the side gains. So in other words, it's like a stereo, a mid-side kind of stereo management tool, I guess. And this enables you to focus whether you want something to be a bit wider or a bit more focused. Let me try and show you what this is doing. It's subtle. But it's basically narrowing it down. It's quite a wide sound. Using this just narrows it down so it feels more like it's here in the mix rather than here. Sometimes really important, again, particularly with hybrid music, you're trying to make space for everything. And to make this mix sound wider as we go through, I'm keeping it fairly narrow at the beginning. It's quite a kind of good technique to kind of just make sure you don't get too far into the arrangement too quickly and suddenly everything sounds huge. It just allows us to give a bit more impact when we go through. So yeah, that's what's happening there. Just a nice little motor. You can see that's being supported with the violas. They're literally almost just sounding like a higher texture for that arpeggio. So that's all they're really doing. It's subtle, but it's kind of meaningful. Okay, let's carry on. We have some pads. These pads we started with are just carrying on, and you'll see we've introduced this predilections pad. Let me show you what this is doing. Again, it's just providing a transition element. Just helps push each chord through to the next chord, if that makes sense. Let me show you with and without. It's just without it's missing a little bit of a transition. We need to transition to each element. Etude says, do you widen any elements of the tracks go on? Yes, we do, but mostly through arrangement, not necessarily through stereo widening tools, just through bringing more things in that are naturally wider and using delays on some elements to make them sound even wider. But I tend not to just be using like a stereo imager where I pull everything out, because that usually makes it a bit phasey and a bit indistinct in the middle. What's the solo vocal that we're using? This is from Solo, so this is part of our starter bundle. In Solo, we have two voices, soprano angelic and soprano operatic. They're very slightly different, and you can probably understand how. Angelic is much more like a modern hybrid voice. Operatic's a little bit more operatic and traditional. But this is the solo voice from Solo, and it's a beautiful one. You know, we've obviously got the one from Jaeger, the famous Moretti voice, which is beautiful, but this one is also incredible. So she sounds like this, with a lot of reverb just to sort of help her float in that space. Yeah, so what else do we have going on here? Do we have anything new to talk about? I don't think so. This is how it all carries on. Let's move up to the beginning of the real start of this track. Okay, let's talk more about transitions, because particularly in hybrid music and trailer music, you really want to push each new section. You really want to lead up to it. You know, you don't just want sudden kind of, you know, almost like a kind of smash, you know, suddenly something comes out of nowhere. No, all this music usually has quite gradient, like, you know, build-ups and breakdowns. So how are we doing this? Well, we're doing a couple of things here, mostly with the effects. So this is a riser from ARTIFACT REANIMATE. Let me just show you what this one sounds like. And you can see all I've done is I've taken one riser. I won't do this for every single thing. And I've just chopped it up. So this is what it sounds like. And I've just exported it to audio and then cut it. And this is a very common way of doing things. You're building tension by cutting first in quarter notes, or rather, I suppose they're not quarter notes, they're 16th notes, but then we're going to triplets and then faster triplets, and that's creating this ramp up. And then we have a whoosh sound accompanying that. This is not cut up. This is just providing a bit more of a solid FX bed. But those two make a really nice transition element. So they provide a nice FX hybrid kind of gritty sound. What else do we have going on here? Let's see. Well, we're going to have some stuff in the percussion. We have this beautiful Grand Casserole from NUCLEUS. So that's just providing this really beefy sort of bass leading there. Then we also have the timpani from NUCLEUS. An extra roll there. And then we're also going to have the brass coming in at this point. If I just isolate the brass. And of course, we're just building a ramp with the dynamics there. So we're starting quiet. That's how we do it there. And pretty similar thing here. We have our strings separated into shorts and longs. And it's just a ramp. So the strings and the brass together. Nice ramp. But then to give it more hybrid sort of excitement, we're adding in these whooshes and rises, which sound like this. They just add a nice effect there. And then, of course, we have some other elements as well. As we said, we've got the drums. So the drums and the percussion are doing this. So we're filling out the frequency spectrum. We have some nice stuff in the high end. We have some nice stuff in the low end with the big rolls. And then in the middle, we have some nice risers and effects just to add some kind of texture and granularity there. Yeah, but we want to sort of build into each section and break down from each section naturally. It's rare you just have like going from a 10 to a 2 or from a 2 to a 10. That's not really how this music worked. It's like the best way to think about it is like electronic music. This music takes a huge amount of inspiration from EDM. EDM is all about building up, breaking down. You know, you don't just sort of go from nothing to everything. It's like the audience want to go on a journey and they want to be taken, they want to know they're going on that journey, you know, so you want to know that something's building to a climax or building to a crescendo. That's a big hallmark of hybrid music. It's very rare that you have a sudden break in the music. You want to know that you're going on a journey and you want to feel the transition sort of happening in real time. So we're really emphasizing that with these techniques, and we're just using stuff like Artifact to give some modern hybrid texture and stuff like that. So let's move on to this next section here. This is where everything gets busy, so there's a lot to talk about here. So Peter asks, was there any tracks that inspired you? Yes, there were some Thomas Bergerson tracks. If you guys know Two Steps from Hell, Thomas Bergerson was one of the composers at Two Steps from Hell. He's also done a lot of his own solo stuff recently and in the past. There's a few of his tracks that, you know, I've definitely taken inspiration from because I love his stuff. And it's just to me, you know, he's one of the founding fathers of quote unquote hybrid music, so I've taken inspiration from that. I think that was the main one, really. I think there were a couple of other like almost like electronic music tracks that I was thinking about as well, but yeah, those were the main ones, mostly Bergson stuff, because I don't think anybody sort of combines the orchestra and the synths better than him. So yeah, he was definitely one of the inspirations here. Okay, let's think about where we go with this. Maybe let's start with the strings. I'm going to isolate the strings. Now, hybrid music very often split strings into long strings and short strings. If you think about when we've been doing things the last few weeks, like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, we're not thinking that way. The strings are the strings. And if, you know, violins too are playing staccato notes, they're not also playing long notes. It's totally different in hybrid music. The strings, you can layer them up multiple times. Very often they're overdubbed if you're recording them live. They can fulfill specific functions. So very often you'll have in hybrid music and trailer music a whole pass of long strings and a whole pass of short strings, and that's completely and utterly normal. And that's what we're doing here. So let me play the short strings. Why am I muted still? Right, okay. Why have I gone muted again? Let me just make sure. Okay. Ah, happy birthday to Audio Imperium. Okay, let's start again. I'm making sure I'm not muted. I'm going to check this as I'm talking now. So in hybrid music, we tend to stack chords up much more thickly than we would in traditional symphonic scoring. We can really go across 2 or 3 octaves in the brass, in the synths, in the strings. It's you can do it a lot more commonly because it's a big thick wall of sound. I'm back. Woo! Sorry guys, I don't know what was going on there. I'm sure I unmuted myself twice, but I'm back. That's the main thing. I'm back. So nice big thick wall of sound with these long strings. You can hear it's just a big, nice, thick wall of sound to fight with all the other elements. Well, not fight, but you know, to cut through all the other elements. And I think particularly important here is we're using a solo cello to give it some more emotion. We're actually using the solo cello from NUCLEUS, not the one from Solo. There's no reason for that. I love both of them. I think as I was writing this, I started using the NUCLEUS cello and was like, this sounds good. But this is a common technique as well, where you're using, let me show you, this adds quite a lot. So here's the strings without the cello. Sound really nice, sound really good, but it's like we want this to sound a little bit more emotional. This is just adding that. And then with the shorts, everything comes together. So nice big thick wall of sound. A kind of similar thing happening in the brass, big thick wall of sound. Solophonic says the wide sound is created by layering and panning. Yes, I haven't actually panned this stuff too much. It is a little bit panned. You can see some of the horns and things are panned. But if I go to my strings, which are all the way down here, or rather all the way back up here, I haven't done too much panning. There's a little bit of panning going on here. But yes, the wide sound is mostly coming from a bit of reverb, which gives it some sort of width and, you know, makes it sound like it's in a space. And then, yeah, the stacking of things. And as you see, when we add the synths in, they add a whole nother element of sort of wideness here as well. So this is a fairly traditional epic music, hybrid music sort of brass ensemble. What we have going on here is our melody in the horns. These are NUCLEUS 6 horns. Nice. Then we have some harmony going on in another patch, a duplicated patch, which is just sustains. Yes, Adrian, that's right. All the brass is from NUCLEUS in this, apart from one solo patch. Then we're layering that up with the trombones. They're providing a lot of the harmony here. Just cutting through a little bit. Love the NUCLEUS trombones. For hybrid stuff, nothing cuts through like the Jaeger or NUCLEUS trombones. They're so good. And I very often come back to them no matter what I'm working on because nothing quite cuts through like them. I've got some tuba in here, but it's pretty quiet because tuba can be a bit muddy. But it is there. And then the NUCLEUS low brass. That's such a great low brass patch, just the perfect sort of amount of power and weight, but also that sort of nice fizzy high end. So altogether, again, if I just bring this up, nice big thick wall of sound. The only other thing we have going on here are very, very quiet trumpets. They're just helping to reinforce the harmony. So all pretty straightforward stuff. We have the vocal carrying on, just picking out the melody again. Bit louder. So going back to what we were talking about earlier about mixing the orchestra, you can hear, we have done some mixing and we'll go into that soon, but it still sounds like an orchestra. It's not completely mixed out of all kind of recognition. Together they sound like this. So still sounds pretty orchestral, pretty much like NUCLEUS, bit more reverb, a little bit of EQ, which we'll go into, and then those big stacked sort of wall of sound style chords, which is not something you'd find in like a Lord of the Rings or a Star Wars, but for modern epic music, yes, all day long, you're going to need this to kind of really punch through. Okay, let's maybe go on to the synths and then we'll come back to the percussion. Synths at this section are doing a few things here, so let's have a listen to these. So you'll see the synths are really kind of adding all of this kind of cool, you know, movement and a lot of these sort of, you know, really wide frequency sort of spectrum here. They're really well represented. First thing to say is we have this lead. It's called the SN1923A from Photosynthesis. Now, training music composers, epic music composers will know this is a very common technique. What we're doing here is we're layering our lead instruments with a synth. The synth has all this kind of distortion. A lot of it's already in the sound. I think I've added a bit more distortion. Let's have a look. Where is it? My 1923, there it is. Actually, no, there's no distortion. This might be a bit of excitement. No, I've just EQ'd out a lot of it. Again, we're really carving space for our synths. But we're not going to be able to hear all the low mid stuff because we have brass there, we have strings there, we have other synths there. So we're just wanting this fizzy element. But let me explain what this is doing. We don't really hear the synth. If I listen to the full arrangement. But if I take it out, you hear that like, it sounds like the French horns are going, but it's not the French horns, it's the synth. What's happening here is we're using this synth to basically reinforce the frequencies of our horns and our strings here. Together, they're creating one big sort of wall of sound. And all that cool distortion and saturation in those synths is helping the melody to cut through, but you don't really notice the synth at first. So yeah, good technique, very often used in trailer music. If you need something to cut through, but not necessarily really hear it, you'll often use a synth like this just to sort of push through what's going on. So let's have a look at what's going on. We've got the bass that's still carrying on, doing the same thing. We've added this element. So I'm not sure this is the rich sweep. Let's just take a look and see. Wait for our contact to load here. Always takes ages the first time around. So it is actually this contour. I don't know what, everything's not very named very well here, but basically it's this contour sound. You can see here it is, a little bit of transient again. There's actually quite a lot going on here. This is one of those sounds. Originally it sounds like this. And then with some distortion and panning, we've got some pan man here to distort it. We've got some destroyer to distort it more. But I really wanted this to be like cutting through as a nice rhythmic element here. So yeah, it's really good. Never thought of layering the melody with the synths. Yeah, it's a really good, useful technique. Someone taught it to me and I was like, oh yeah, this is how all these trailer composers get these really natural organic sounds, but they're larger than life and they're layering a lot of synth sometimes. And you don't really hear the synth, but it's adding musical distortion and musical kind of fullness, you know, to the sound that's just buried in the background. You'll see it even more as we go through the track. So we have this higher transient thing going on and this as well. So you can see what's happening is we're basically copying this part we had at the beginning with a higher transient synth. What that's doing is, again, it's like a psychoacoustic technique. You don't really hear that synth. It just sounds like the old synths cutting through more. Let me show you what I mean. It's really subtle, but, you know, if I play them in isolation, it almost sounds like the same part, you know, but it's just reinforced now with this higher, slightly clickier transient sound that's going to cut through more. To give that more motion, then we've got, going back to that contour pad, just adding this nice cool movement in the background. Underneath that we have this. So this is a pad called Kilowatt from Photosynthesis, and again, treat it quite heavily here, but the original pad's still cool. They just distorted the bejesus out of it. A little bit of panning and delay again, and then those two are working together. They're really the same sound. Really, it's one sound built out of two different patches. So that doesn't quite work. That doesn't quite work, but together, nice big rich full sound. It's subtle, but it's there. Yeah, it's a really sort of useful kind of you know, layer to have without. It's really subtle. You probably even can't hear it with all the YouTube compression, but it is definitely adding something. We have this. So these next few, we have these basses, which are actually all EQ'd quite heavily. So let me show you one of these basses as an example. Even though we have 3 tracks here and it looks really dense, really all that's happening here, let me show you all the basses. These are really just all basses. And we're all thinking of them as starting off like this. And then as we get to the fuller section, we add more elements. But they're all just providing this one big wall of sound at the beginning. So yeah, there looks like there's a lot going on, and there is in some ways, but it's really just to provide this one purpose of giving this nice big thick bass with some high-end elements to cut through. The sound design's so cool in the starter bundle. Yeah, definitely do it. I mean, it's great. You know, it's just so useful. And as I say, you can mangle and distort all of this. Even though I've got quite a lot of plugins here, it's all kind of pretty simple stuff. It's just, you know, adding some transients, lots of decapitator and destroyer, which are distortions, a little bit of panning to make it move in the mix so it's not too static. And yeah, everything just layers up quite nicely then, so all together. But it's kind of interesting because even though it's a lot of, I mean, I don't know how many tracks we got here, like 15 or something, but there's really 3 or 4 things going on. There's a lead. There is essentially one ARP here, which is combined of 2 tracks. There is this sort of mid to high layer here, which is just providing a lot of kind of sustain and interesting, cool sound design. And then really all of these tracks are just functioning as one bass element. So we really have four elements, I suppose: a lead element, an arp element, a kind of sustain ear candy element, and then a bass element, and they all come together. So this is a factor of hybrid music. Lots of tracks, but arrangement-wise, four things going on. And that's kind of true of almost every element, right? It's like the strings. We have a lead element, we have the bass element, we have the sustain elements, and we have the motor elements, the moving staccato strings. So lots of tracks, but few things going on in the arrangement. It's just each thing is really just sort of contributing to the sound design of stuff. Hello, Toby. Thank you for joining us. Is it better to process MIDI instrument or bounce it out to audio first? Really depends on how you like to work and your resources. I like to do as much as possible as MIDI because you can go back and change it easily then. If you bounce it out to audio and then you add more stuff and you decide, oh, it's not working, sometimes it's hard to go back, you know. But plenty of people bounce out either because they don't have the resources and you need to bounce out to keep all your template in check. That's a completely fine way to work. Or because some people prefer it. Some people like to commit. You know, a lot of people say being forced to commit is a really good thing because, you know, then I have to make choices and I have to stick by my choices. And I can definitely see the benefit of that workflow. I'll tell you truthfully, the only reason I work in MIDI as much as possible is because I do some custom music for trailers or pitch a lot for trailers. And with that stuff, you just need to be as flexible and quick as possible. Anything that needs, you know, reverse engineering or needs to go back to it's just too hard. I just want everything good and easy to go. So if someone says, hey, I love it, but I just need more of that synth or less of that sound, or what's that annoying thing going on there, I can say, oh, what do you mean? Oh, it's that. I'll take it out or I'll change it. No problem. Whereas if it was bounced to audio, I might have to say, oh, I'm going to have to, you know, load up the instrument file and start again or whatever. So I keep everything in MIDI as much as possible, but bouncing out is a completely legitimate way to work, and some people prefer it, and there are benefits to it in terms of keeping yourself disciplined and on track as a composer. I saw the bundles on sale and wondering if I only wrote NUCLEUS full version, is there any further cost reduction on the bundle? I'm not 100% sure. I think there are people in the Audio Imperia channel or in Audio Imperia team here, so hopefully they will answer. I think there are, but don't quote me on that. Hopefully someone will answer and let you guys know. Okay, so let's have a look at what else is going on. Not much in the effects here because it's a very busy section, so we just have the metals carrying on. Pretty straightforward stuff. One thing I do want to show you here, though, is did you notice that little sound at the beginning? What I've done is I've taken a riser that we use later in the track, I've reversed it, and I've just used the first second. Let me show you why I've done that. Here is the riser that we showed earlier on into this section. Just kind of flubs out to nowhere. This little burst of white noise almost acts like a cymbal. So let me show you how it contributes. It just adds this punch at the beginning of this phrase. It's subtle, but without it. See how we don't get as much hit? With this, we really get a sense that just adds a lot. So that's a good technique. Sometimes a little bit of white noise or, you know, big hit like that at the beginning of a phrase just really adds something. Okay, let's move on and take a look at the percussion. So we have orchestral percussion or NUCLEUS. Then we have epic percussion or CERBERUS. Together, they sound like this. So a nice groove here. Let's take a look at what's going on. We have this atonal percussion, these big booms. They're just providing a nice bit of low end there. We then have the NUCLEUS drum kit doing this. So that drum kit's quite heavily processed. We've taken out a lot of the bass and the treble, and we're just using it to kind of add a bit of rhythm. So these are really our subby booms. We then have the piatti, the crash cymbal. That's adding some of that white noise high end to make it cut through. Just on these downbeats. We have this element here. This is really important. This is a hi-hat motor. So this really helps everything cut through. Let me show you short strings. Let me just do the short strings. really adds some energy and momentum to the moving elements there. So I think that's everything from our orchestral percussion at that support point. So yeah, a lot of the low bass stuff, the real sub stuff that's going on there, the timpani and some of the drum kit as well. In the epic percussion, we have these low drums. So they're low, but they're not as low as the bass. So let's see how these stack together. Atonal percussion, which is just the grand cassa. And I think, let me just double check what I've done with this. Have I done anything to it? Yeah, I've added some R bass to it. So R bass is really cool for adding nice subby stuff. Let me show you without. With all that nice, big, thick, subby stuff is added. And I've also pushed the volume of it as well. So it's like a sonic enhancement for the low end. And you want really nice subby low end here. But subby low end alone is, you know, not enough. You also want a sort of low, but not too low bit. That's where CERBERUS comes in. That's just providing this kind of pulse, I suppose. We have a little bit more NUCLEUS here. These are just grand cassas, but higher up. So these have been processed to be grand cassas that have a lot of sub, and then we have the normal grand cassas. And then toms are providing what you might expect, tom-like rhythms. Pretty quiet. To give us a little bit more energy, the snares. They're just providing almost like a constant rhythm. And then clicks and clacks, but these are used in a slightly more rhythmic way. So all together. Cool. Now, another thing that happens a lot in epic music, hybrid music, trailer music is you're separating out your percussion, which is the percussive elements, but the ones that tend to be moving more from hits. Hits are the big downbeat elements. In trailer music, they're really important because they're literal edit points, and they sort of really define the whole piece. In hybrid epic music, they're less used that way, but they can still be thought of that way. They're the big downbeat elements and the lead up to those big downbeat elements. So let me show you what's happening in the hits. And it's pretty subtle. It's not as massively hit-like as trailer music would be, where the hits are everything, but there's still some important roles that are being played here. See what's going on there. So we have this trailer hit, which has been pretty heavily EQ'd. You'll see a lot of the low end is kind of gone from there. Just taking that out. What that's doing is just picking out the important downbeat elements with the percussion. Ultimate Nova says, hey, do you make the percussion sound huge like that? So it's really just about layering, I think. A lot of it's to do with layering. Let me show you all the different, just so you guys can see. So for example, on this low drum here, if I play and take off, it's not changing it too much. What I'm doing with this is just cutting out a tiny bit of the low end because the sub lives there. And this is a stock Cubase Puig textile EQ, as they call it. I'm just doing a tiny bit of a boost in these sort of low ends here. But it's all pretty simple stuff. But it's just layering. It's all about having usually just one really big low element. And then a kind of slightly higher up element. And then we're reinforcing that with the grand cassas. A little bit more frequency. To get some more movement, we've got these toms, and the toms are smaller than all the previous instruments that have come before. So they're not as huge and cavernous, but they're more focused. So have a listen to this. Now we need a little bit more frequency. So what we're basically doing is adding the snares that are giving some more higher end stuff. And then clicks. So it's all kind of arrangement. There's not much else going on. Let me see. In fact, none of these, some of these are being sent to reverbs, but most of them aren't being sent to reverbs because there's enough going on in the reverb. This has a bit of reverb in it standard, the Sanders Hall. So let me just show you Seventh Heaven. It's adding quite a lot. But it's pretty basic reverb, the kind of thing you get with almost any reverb. So it's just layering. Yeah, the best way to think about it is it's like a house, right? You have foundations, and the foundations need to be really solid, and therefore you don't have too much going on in the foundations. Usually your low end tends to have just big downbeats that are really marking out the major elements. And then as you go up to the mids, you have a bit more going on. So you can see that the big low elements here, just literally downbeats. Then we have a bit more going on in this low element here because it's a bit higher up. Then we're reinforcing all that. More movement again in the toms and snares. Then we're using the clicks and clacks to pick out some of the key rhythms. Drum kit for a bit of reinforcement. And then the high end of the piatti just to sort of bring it all together, make it nice and full, and pick out the downbeats again. So Tony asks, are those reverbs on each tracks or auxes? I'm a very messy person, so it's both. I have reverb set up. So if I take you to the end of my chain here, you can see I've got a hall reverb, a room reverb, and a black hole. But then sometimes as I'm working on a couple of tracks, I'm like, I just want to add its own specific reverb. Sometimes because it's a reverb that's different to what I've got set up. So some of these tracks have specific reverbs, and you'll see why as we go through. And then some of them are just being sent, and some of them have a little bit of both sometimes. It's all just hacking about until I find what I want, but I don't have an exact system for this. I try to use sends as much as possible, but sometimes when I just know I want something for a specific track, I'll just load it up inside of the track because I just, I don't want to have to go and make a send and then send it and everything. Should we try using the MIDI examples here? It really all works. Yes, I'll put this up in the Discord and you feel free to use it. Toby says, when you do volumes of balance, you have to see adjust by such small margins, I can barely hear a difference. Do you adjust by ear normally, or is it more by meters dB? It's mostly by ear. Truthfully, I wish I could say it's all very clever. Each decibel is, exactly what I imagined, and I have a reason. Sometimes it's just I'm messy, I'm trying things, it kind of works, and then I change it again, it doesn't quite work, and when I look back, it's like there's all these tiny little changes here and there, but sometimes not all of them are necessary. It's just where I've gone back and forth over things. But I do try and automate where I really need to. If I sort of show you some of the automation on these things, you'll see I am riding things up and down where they need to, and we'll maybe go in towards that a bit towards the end so we can see how we're doing all that. But it's just making sure as instruments drop out, like you can see here, the reason it's happening is because the bass drops out, so I want the sub bass or the mid bass to come up to compensate. So these drop out, this comes up to compensate. Yeah, Valhalla's great, Seventh Heaven is great too. Yeah, they're my go-tos. So yeah, with the hits, let's go back to the hits. We have this nice whoosh hit from ARTIFACT REANIMATE at the beginning to take us into this. And that's just picking out these moments. And you'll see something that's really important in hybrid music, epic music, trailer music. A lot of whooshes in. Remember when we talked about how we transitioned in to this element here? We have this transition. Sometimes you have a transition that just lasts a few milliseconds. This is a good example. Here, have a listen. Do you see how just before the hit we have a shh? Not in every one, but some of them. Same here at the end. Here we have a whoosh in. What those whooshes in are doing are just leading in to key moments. See how they just have no shh. This happens a lot in hybrid epic music. Again, it's all about leading into things, right? It happens in EDM music. There's a lot of like cymbal rolls or like white noise rolls into stuff. Subtle techniques, but really important when you're creating excitement. Almost everything has a little lead in, and that little lead in gives you, It's hard to explain, but the more you try this stuff, the more you'll see what I mean. You get a that kind of thing going on. Supermassive, that's a great plugin as well. I think it's free, Supermassive. So yeah, we have the hits going on. The hits are just picking out the percussion. So let me show you the hits and the percussion together. See how on these big downbeats they're adding a lot. Without, it's like you don't really get anything. But with the hits, really nice, big, full, kind of epic sound. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything for this section here. If there's anything I haven't explained or you'd like me to go through more detail, let me know. And we will do mixing a bit more at the end as well. So let's go. So let's talk about this section. It's kind of a little breakdown section. It's a bit more melodic. Let's have a look first of all what's going on in the strings. So we have these driving strings. Vocal is from solo. Yes, the vocals, we have two of them as we go on, you'll see, but they're both from solo. There's two of them in the library and they're both slightly different sounding. So here we go. First thing to say is we stop the movement in the short strings. There is a little bit there in the violas you'll hear. But this is a much more flowing section. So we back off some of the motor stuff. We really have it driving forward. This section, we back some of it off and we bring in much more long strings. So you can hear in the strings, back off the shorts, start bringing more of the longs in here. Toby, yes, I think I probably can upload the stems. I'll have to try and find a way to do it because I'm not sure I can put the stems on Discord. They might be too big, but I'll definitely try and find a way to make this available for you guys. So if you have the starter collection, you can use the MIDI and play around with it, and you can check the stems out as well. Okay, so we're doing the same thing. Yeah, I'll definitely try and make it available for you guys. I don't see why I can't. If I can, it will be in the Discord. I'll let you guys know how to get it in the Discord. So we have the violins playing the melody here. And same technique again. These are actually, even though these are solo violins and cellos, they're actually solo violins and cellos from NUCLEUS, not from solo. But you could use the ones from solo as well. I just like the ones from NUCLEUS. They're just adding more emotion. They're adding a lot there. So a nice big flowing section in the strings. The only thing that really happens is as we get to this second half of this section, we add the shorts an octave higher. You'll see in the beginning, it's just the violas and then the violins come in. So we just add a bit more energy there by bringing in the high shorts. Etudes asks, how does the structure of this type of hybrid music differ from trailer structure? Really good question. And it is quite significantly different. So hybrid music tends to have more of a song-like structure. Not always, but you know, there's less structural demands. If you want to do almost the equivalent of like an A section, a B section, back to an A section, to a C section, whenever you can, that's fine. Trailers are generally much more rigid. They do have sometimes different sections, but they're much more rigid. And the best way that I can think to describe it is there is less lyricism in trailers. This has a hummable melody in places and it has more going on. It has a key change later on, as you're going to see. None of that stuff would really be acceptable in most trailer music. Trailer music is much more functional. The melodies tend to be a lot more simplistic. It's much more just chord based. The rhythm of trailer music tends to be more direct, you know, so you have hits and things, but they tend to be more one, like a downbeat, dum, 2, 3, dum, 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 dum. It's like a lot more direct. This has more percussive flourishes and stuff like that. that wouldn't tend to be in trailer music very much. And yes, the structure of trailer music is usually either 3 acts. So you get an act 1, which is like an intro, an act 2, which is your middle, and then the big climax at the end, and then sometimes a little button to go out. Sometimes you'll have a breakdown in trailer music. Sometimes you'll have 2 breakdowns in trailer music. But generally speaking, it starts here and it does this. It goes up and up and up, and it may do this and this and this. This kind of does the same thing, but it has more different types of things going on. You'd never get a section like this in trailer music. It just wouldn't happen. So you're never going to get this. This kind of breakdown is much more like a song breakdown or an EDM style breakdown. Yeah, we'll maybe do an episode on trailer music and talk a bit more about the structure, because I think that would be really useful to know. But they are quite different. But production-wise, they're not too different. So the production methods we're talking about apply to trailer music a lot. But the structure and the purpose of trailer music tends to be a lot different. Okay, let's carry on with this. We looked at the strings. Let's have a listen to the brass here. No problem, Etchy. If you have any questions, do feel free to ask, and I'll try and help as best I can. And it's a really good question, and I think that we will answer it better by maybe breaking down a trailer track or something, or writing one together in another episode, so we can see how you approach the structure of that differently, which is usually quite different. So you can hear we back all the brass down here. It's a lot quieter here. We have a nice little counter melody in the horns. We have big thick trombone chords here in low brass. Second that with the trailer tutorial. Absolutely, I think it'd be great fun to do. Etchy says, which structure is this particular track using? That's a good question. I think you could really describe it as like an A, B, C, A kind of. Has sort of 3 distinct sections. Maybe we'll do the little structural analysis soon and have a look. And yes, the DOM team would be great to get on this. So same thing here, starting off with the trombones and horns. Pretty quiet as hybrid music goes, or epic music goes. To reinforce as we go through, we then bring in the low brass and the trumpets halfway through. Again, just filling out the frequency spectrum here. You can see, you can't see my fingers, but you can see how we're starting like this, building out like this, you know, but everything is sort of remaining quite thick and quite full at every single point. But yeah, we're building the section as we go. So with the strings, sounds like this. It's a nice big full section. The star of the show here probably is the vocals. Now the choir is from NUCLEUS, has a beautiful choir, and the solo is the solo angelic voice, or the soprano angelic voice from solo. Now you can hear the choir is quite weirdly mixed in a way here. It's got quite a lot going on. So that's the normal choir, much more full, beautiful, you know. This almost sounds like it's coming through a telephone, which I know sounds a bit weird. This is an example of pocketing things, you know. This is such a full arrangement that the choir, which usually takes up a big part of the frequency spectrum, we just need it to be in a very specific area. Otherwise, it's going to drain out the other vocals, going to drain out, you know, some of the strings and things, or just not going to really add much, you know, without causing mud and things. So that's all we're doing here, is we're just cutting out everything that we really don't need from this choir. Sounds a bit weird in isolation. But in the mix, you can hear the choir, but it's not conflicting with anything it doesn't have to conflict with. You know, we're really just narrowing it down to what it absolutely needs to be here. Okay, let's maybe look at the synths. There's not much to talk about in the synths here, mostly just stuff that we've already heard. a lot of these kind of gated synths, you know, these rhythmic synths. We do have a nice little flourish here. So here's a good example of where you never want too much dead space in music. We have these chords. Because we hold that chord for twice as long as the other chords, we need something to happen there. And what we do is we have in our pitch percussion, the celeste, and our synths, we have just this little rise and fall. Just a nice little moment to make sure that nothing gets too dead. We never have a moment where we're just like, oh, nothing's happening. It has to keep pushing forward. Just a little moment, you know, to kind of make sure we don't hold on a chord too long. Other than that, this is all pretty much what we've been doing in previous things. As I said, the only thing not in our scoring collection is this really simple bass stuff that we got going on. These are literally bog standard. Any synth will do this. It's just basic sawtooth, square waves, sine waves with some filtering. It's the stuff that you learn in the first era of synths, but it sounds really good, and it combines really lovely with the photosynthesis stuff. So we have a nice synthesized element that's truly software synth, and then, or you know, more pre-recorded organic elements. So nice. But then with the magma bass from photosynthesis, adding a bit of texture, and then with some of these higher elements that we have going on here. These are all from photosynthesis. Really works to create this nice solid foundation. Here we back most things out and we just have everything else going on the same as normal. It does sound like it's from a convenience store. Not much to talk about with the synths. We have the pianos playing chords, but something that's interesting to note here is that I've EQ'd the pianos at this point. Let me show you. If I come further back. See how I just EQ a bit of the low end there? In the beginning, we want a bit more of the low end because it's a less cluttered mix. In the beginning, there's just a few elements going on. So I want some more of that stuff going on here. Later on, it's really busy, but I have the pianos carry on, but I've just tucked out some more of that. Here, how it's different to here. Bit more rounded, full here. Here, a lot more stingy and less mid. Because I just need to hear that top element, just picking out those chords, and then a nice little delay there just to make it sort of sound a bit EDM-like and a bit, you know, just really nicely sits over the synth. Pretty simple stuff though. To create a nice transition element here, just to keep it a bit more hybrid, we got a whoosh again. Whoosh is the same as all the other ones. But have a listen how it just takes us into that chord really nice. Really adds a lot without drawing attention to itself. Without it, it sounds a bit flat. It's okay, but again, all this music is about motion and transition and build. You know, you want everything. You really got to find a balance between making it punchy and clear, but also just having everything going on all the time. Yeah, Rock Nardin is really good. Obviously Blake's a genius. Obviously the percussion backs off here for the most part, but there is one element that I bring in here that's really cool. So backs right down. But in the second half of this, we add this really cool drum kit from ARTIFACT REANIMATE. Let me just show you what that's doing. And there's a lot of reverb on this, so it's a heavily processed drum kit. So that's a really nice sort of, you know, floating but stable kind of percussive sound that happens in the back half of this, and it carries on through the piece. Adds a lot. let's talk about this little sort of breakdown section here from about here. Let's take a look at what's going on. We have the motor strings, but they're playing something slightly different now. It's just downward. And quieter. So there's more tension here because it's just relentless. Whereas in the beginning we have sort of up and down. Nice arc. Now we have a change. Just instantly more tense. It's like you kind of know something's happening here. That's pretty much all that's going on in the strings. We have this really beautiful solo descant horn. Now, I almost feel, oh, it's actually no, it's the solo descant horn. I feel bad because solo is so full of beautiful, expressive instruments. But in this arrangement, I've just kind of turned them all into kind of almost synthy-like sounds. But let me show you. I love this because it's got a really realistic and beautiful human performance, but we've kind of sound designed it into something that's almost sounds like it's floating in the air. It's got such a good sound. Let me just show you guys without all the processing on it. So if I just take the black hole and here's what it sounds like. So you can see the delay. If I just put the delay on, that instantly adds a lot. Without delay, it's very dry. With the delay, it already sounds more spacious. And then to make this float in the mix and make it sound a lot more ethereal, we got the black hole and the Hall reverb on it. So really almost sounds like a synth, but it has a much more human, realistic, expressive quality. But that's just floating in that section. In the pitch percussion, we kind of just have a combination of the glockenspiel and the tubular bells picking out some of the notes, and then the harp is helping with the strings. So this is all NUCLEUS. Pretty straightforward stuff. In the synths, we don't have a huge amount different going on. It's just kind of carrying on what we were doing. But there's two very different important elements here. The first thing is this, really simple, but it really adds a lot. Listen for that in the full mix. It really kind of adds, you know, a kind of intro to the section. Without, it's like it's just not got anything. A lot of texture. This kind of little section here is really important too. Really distorted. So these are helping along with the piano and the pitch percussion to create this really interesting blend of organic and synth. But it almost sounds like it's like a ripping texture, you know, it's almost like it's kind of ripping through the fabric of time or something. That's a bit melodramatic, but you know what I mean. In the context of the mix, listen how it really adds a lot of kind of cool textural stuff. The only thing to say here is that we go from a minor to a major. That's how you get this kind of nice big swell, I guess. We have this E minor. This is all E minor. There we go to an E major. that's just a little transition moment. Let's see what's going on. Just held notes in the... And a tremolo from NUCLEUS there. You can hear it just bubbling away to give some extra kind of tension. Same thing is going to be going on the brass, just held chords in the low brass and the horns. And it's discordant, right? It's clashing. It just creates this tension because for the first time we're hearing this kind of really discordant section. We have a little choir hold here. From our shopping mall speakers. And then pretty much the same thing that we had going on at the beginning, this transition element here. Obviously, the big difference here is we're adding a downer. So this is a downer straight from ARTIFACT REANIMATE. I don't think I've done anything to this hardly. Nope, nothing whatsoever. It's just straight out of the box. Nice. Really adds a great impact sound here. And I think that's every element that's going on here. So let's listen to our big back end, which is the same pretty much as the beginning. But it's a minor third higher. It now has this cool drum kit groove, and it's obviously a lot more intense in the orchestration. Cool, so let's have a look at what's going on here. Pretty much in the percussion, the same as what was going on before, but just more intense. One thing that is happening here is, again, talking about these transition elements quickly into things. This suspended cymbal is coming in to sort of bring a flourish into each downbeat. Hear how it sort of zips us into each downbeat. The minor third technique, yes, always a classic for building tension. Again, not something you would usually do in trailer music because you want trailer music to nearly always be in the same key unless it's a really clear reason otherwise, or it's been requested specifically if you're doing a custom. But nearly always you want trailer music to be in the same key. We're not bound to that here, so we've gone up a minor third to create some tension. I think we have now, I've duplicated the drum kits and I've sort of essentially isolated the cymbals. That's really adding this kind of almost rock-like sound to it. Then I have this. Super quiet because it's not important, and then the toms again. But it's really, that's the big thing there, and you'll see why as we go through. In the epic percussion, we have quite a full beat now. So really kind of, you know, propelling clicks and clacks here. They're just providing constant snares. A lot of nice sort of sustain. Toms, pretty quiet. Low drums. And the grand casses. We do have a couple of elements here. So I've processed these grand casses. These should really be in the epic percussion, but I've just not moved them around. Processed these. These are providing this low bass element. And I've exported them to audio. Now, the reason for this is because you can see I'm using the fade and being able to move this to precisely shape the downbeat. One of the things in epic music and hybrid music is you have these big downbeats with all the bass and stuff, but if you let them ring on too long, they really clog up the mix and they make everything sound very, you know, it's just, it sort of doesn't have any definition. So what I've done, these were a bit too long. I can probably show you. Let me show you what we had. See how they rumble for ages? By that point, you want it all gone. So I've exported it and I've tightened it up. Goes quite quickly for the second half. And that's really important because it means it gets out of the way for the main melody stuff. So it has a nice clean sort of end to each downbeat so we can get back to the melody stuff and not have all this rumbly stuff going on. This is, let me show you guys, a little sub kick from ARTIFACT REANIMATE. It's pretty quiet in the mix, but it's just adding a bit more of a succinct downbeat to each of these. Just really adding a kind of boom. So that's what that's doing there. We have the piattis as always. The obviously big thing here is we have the drums here. So these three combined together. I'll show you what I've done. I've broken out the bass drum into a big downbeat and then these sort of offbeat ones. So, and that first downbeat's really cool. It's got this really kind of flubby kind of character to it, which is unique, and the other ones are a lot cleaner. So I'm just using that as a bit of a kind of more of a characterful downbeat. And then more of a stabby bum, bum, bum. And they are being combined with the drums here. And then we have these hits from ARTIFACT REANIMATE as well, just to help each one of those sound bigger. Just adds a lot of weight, and then these trailer hits are just picking out the downbeats again. Very quiet in this arrangement. Thank you, Ultima. I'm glad you're liking it. Yeah, it was really fun one to work on, this was, so I'm glad you're enjoying it. Okay, let's see what else we have going on here. So the percussion altogether, just kind of what was doing before, but taken up a level with the addition in particular of this drum kit that's really adding a cool kind of groove to it. Nice kind of modern hybrid sensibility. So yeah, that's everything. We got a few NUCLEUS subs. Again, they're tightened. They're pretty quiet because we already have the sub stuff going on here. They probably don't even need to be in there, but they've just been left in. They're pretty much buried by the rest of the stuff. Pitch percussion. We have the harp providing a motor along with the short strings. So this is really important. Usually a harp part like this, you wouldn't want. It sounds weird. It sounds weak. It's not how the harp would be played. At this moment, I'm almost using it like a really transient synth here. So you'll hear it actually fits better with the synths. Right, you'd think it was a synth, and it's really just being used like a synth. So this is a good example of where we've got an organic instrument, and it was being used more organically. At this point, we're just repurposing it as a kind of synthy style thing to give us more crispness to the top end. Really adds a lot. Let's see what else we've got going on here. The only other thing we have really going on, most of it we've already heard from the previous section. We do have this element. Badly played in by me. I have not quantized this and it shows, but you can hardly hear it. It's just picking out these cool little textures in the track. We have all this stuff going on. Kind of what we had before. One new element is this vital synth again. Again, on this occasion, I wanted a really basic synth. So it's almost too basic for photosynthesis, which has a lot of amazing character stuff, but it layers so good with photosynthesis. So this is doing this. And then with all the cool photosynthesis stuff, it just really just works beautifully together. So that's all the incredible sound design, organic, beautiful, rich. And then a little bit of top end sort of hit there. I did mix on the go, kind of. I not completely. I wait to the end to really finesse it. But yeah, because I was trying to make all these things, often when you're mixing hybrid stuff, you sort of have to mix as you go because there's so many, especially with synths, like you just don't need sometimes 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% of the sound. And it sounds so muddy and you're like, oh, I just need to focus it down to this tiny little slither. So you often do mix on the go because otherwise it just gets too muddy. It depends on how complex the track is or how you prefer to work. But yeah, I kind of mixed on the go for the most part here. Let's see what else we've got. We've got a little piano going on here. I've duplicated it. So again, picking out a few notes with the harp and then with the synths. So yeah, being kind of powerhouse by photosynthesis, a little bit of basic synth work going on. I'm just using Vital. You could literally use anything. It's simple, super simple, synth work. And then KLAVIER is providing this really lovely organic sound. But it's a slightly less trailery sound than this. This is much more bloomy. All of that reverb would clutter up this section. So I've tightened it up a bit, less reverb, a little bit more piano. But all together kind of just works. Vocals. Okay, so the choir really comes into its own here. You see we've increased it. The second time around, I've added in the operatic voice, and this is harmonizing with the angelic voice. I think this sounds really cool, and it just adds a lot of tension to the, or, you know, sort of drama to the back end, if you like. So they work really well together. And I think it works better than just duplicating the angelic voice. To have two very slightly different voices just works really nicely. To make the brass really, because the brass is sort of, it's the French horn you're really hearing as the melody driver here. So that is the, yeah, we're really playing the brass, the horns in particular, right at the top of the range to really get them to sing through. And maybe we can do, yeah, I think that'd be a really good idea, Peter. I'd love to do that. Like get a brief and just show people, you know, the horrendous madness that comes when the brief comes through and you have to interpret everything and figure it out. And someone's telling you it needs to be delivered in 24 hours, if you're lucky, maybe 12 hours, maybe 6 hours, who knows. But yeah, it's a really, really fun thing to do. So I think we should definitely do that and give people a taste of like what it's like to get a brief, what a brief might look like, you know, and what you've got to work with. If you guys don't know, if you've never done trailer music customs before, you hardly ever get to see, in fact, I don't think I've ever seen footage from a film, particularly if you're working on a major film, like a big, you know, Disney film or something. They're not going to send you a cut of the trailer. There won't be a cut of the trailer. Very likely they'll be working to the music that they get. So you get a brief, you know, the trailer editor or the trailer sort of people will have an idea of what they want, and they might know certain melodies they want to use or certain sounds they want to go for, or at 45 seconds we need this thing to happen, and they may have a rough cut or they may have hardly anything, and you've got to work to a brief, and the brief could be 3 paragraphs long, it could be 3 lines long, it could be quite detailed, it could be not very detailed at all. It's a really interesting thing. It's wonderful fun. It's also quite daunting. But yeah, it's a really interesting workflow. And so maybe we should analyze it at some point. The life of a customs trailer, which is kind of just riding by the seat of your pants, trying to figure out how to get something done in the time that sounds good, that sounds huge, that's on brief. But it's great fun, and it's all part of the joy of being a customs composer, because it's like you don't land everything that you do, but sometimes you just get that, you know when somebody's cutting to your music or something, it's a really exciting feeling. And then sometimes you get the good news, yeah, they've used your music, and it's really cool. It's a really cool feeling, right? It's like you've helped inspired the feel of the trailer and the way the trailer kind of progresses. You also often get a lot of edits needing doing. Someone will say, love the music, or they're using the music, but they need this section to go, this section to be expanded. We need a hit at 29 seconds, whatever it might be. So you do a lot of revisions as well. But it's a really interesting way of working. Just to break down this brass really quickly. Low brass, just playing big, low, stabby notes. Sounds great. Tubas probably hardly here in the mix. No. Tubas, the more busy the mix gets, the sort of more flubby and they don't really quite fit in. So I've added them here, but they've been turned pretty much. They've actually been turned up, but you don't really hear them. They're still very quiet. Trombones, big sort of harmonic driver here. More chords in the horns. More chords in the trumpets, but the trumpets are again very quiet. They've been mixed low here. So big wall of sound, all NUCLEUS, and then the melody in the horns. So yeah, that's everything that's got on there. Peter says, it's also nice to be actively working on a real project. Sometimes hard to stay inspired on your 30th catalog track. Yeah, I think the ideal world is a mix of like catalog and customs, right? If you do too many customs, for me personally, especially trying to do audio and pure stuff at the same time, it can be a bit overwhelming, but it's great fun. I love it when I get the opportunity. But I think the best thing is a mix of both, because then you get to spend a bit more time on tracks sometimes, but you get the occasional adrenaline jolt of a custom coming in, and you've really just got to work to the best you can to the brief, and it's great fun. Hey Bannerman, yeah, 30th catalog track in 1 year is good going, Peter. It's definitely tough times sometimes. Okay, short strings doing the same as they were before, just pushing forward. Long strings again, big thick full chords right across the range of the orchestra, just picking out the melody and the harmony, all the big stuff, basically. Thank you for joining us, Bannerman, by the way. Yeah, thank you. Good to see you. Same as always. One thing you'll notice here is we've turned the bass down. So this is sometimes that quite commonly happens in hybrid music, because the reason being, we have so much bass stuff going on in the synths. I mean, if we were just using an orchestra, double bass would definitely be in there, but listen to this, If I put the basses in, it just doesn't work. Even here, not needed. So this happens quite a lot. I notice, sometimes you may have a bass for a certain section, like this section here, where it becomes a little bit more orchestral driven. We backed down the subs and we brought up the bass to compensate. So here the bass, you can hear it jumps in volume. Comes up a bit. But the reason for that is if you listen to it in combination with the sub synths and the basses here, they back down. So we lose most of the sub stuff, and that's why we bring the basses up. So a lot of hybrid music is about quite careful sculpting and management of things, and there'll be a lot more riding. Again, if this is a pure orchestral track, you'd probably be barely doing much automation at all. You might be bringing something up a bit or down a bit, but the orchestra would sing there in the room the way it's supposed to. But because this is hybrid and we're combining it with choirs and you know, synths and percussion and stuff like that, we need to make more aggressive choices than we normally would. So on its own, sounds a bit weird. A bit empty. Feels like we should do this. Get a nice solid bass. But we don't need to do that because when I bring in the low synths, that's where all our energy is coming from. So yeah, it's all about choices. If I didn't have these synths going on, I would probably bring the bass up because that would be my key bass element then. But because I have all these cool synths going, it's like we just don't need the bass. When it gets this busy in this mix, we don't need the bass. Solo cello is just picking out the very quiet again. You'd never really hear it in the mix, but it just sort of is there. Again, this happens a lot in hybrid music where you're quite aggressively cutting certain elements at certain points because you don't really need them. I think that's pretty much everything that we've gone through, to be honest. I think there's not much more to go through. We've done the hits, we've done the trailers, trailer hits, yeah, we've done the synths. The synths are almost all from Photosynthesis. The only exceptions are these free synths. They are just patches that I've made. And the reason I've used free synths, I don't think I've explained this. Basically, sometimes it's just easier to use like a soft synth, you know, and you could use any synth. Any synth will do what I'm doing here. There's nothing special about any of this. So it's just really simple sub bass that's gated. So it's got this movement, got this mid bass. And the reason I like using these sometimes as well is because you can get more movement out of them. Listen to the way I'm using the velocity here. See, I'm driving the velocity and it's creating all these cool little random velocity moments. It goes down. So that's why I like using the soft synths, but alone they sound a little bit, they sound good, but they sound maybe a little bit plastic. Combining them with the photosynthesis stuff is where they come to life. So it's the best is a combination. See how that's got all the amazing textural stuff. Without that, it's cool, but sounds a little bit plastic. With the photosynthesis, so much more cool organic stuff going on. And then when we add everything else in, so yeah, I have used a couple of synths outside of Starter Collection, but I think it's fair game because this is literally Synth 101. Load up any synth on planet Earth, it will just do this stuff. I mean, I can, as I said, I showed you, but I can show you again. It's all sine and saw stuff, and then just some filters to give it some movement and some energy. And then this kind of gating going on here. And yeah, it just works so well with the pretty nice solid bass section. Without that stuff, it sounds a lot more, doesn't cut through. That's where photosynthesis is so brilliant. Just pre-curated amazing sounds that you can sprinkle in, get some great sound candy going on, and also some really, really cool lead stuff as well. You can see I've dropped the lead stuff back here at the end, still there, doing the same thing as it was. Almost sounds like the French horn, but without French horn doesn't cut through as much. Kaya asks, might be off topic, totally fine if you can't say, but any hints what the next Audio Imperial library might be, or if there's anything in the works or planned? Just curious. My lips have to be sealed. All I can tell you is there is obviously lots of cool stuff planned. You know, some stuff further in the future, some stuff maybe not too far away, you know, but you know, we'll see what happens. Yeah, but there is stuff planned, of course. You know, this is the 10-year anniversary, but I think we're just getting started. I'm so excited about all the things that we have planned. Of course, I would say that, but genuinely I am. What they are, I cannot say. You just have to follow us and sort of see, you know, where things go. But yeah, we've been discussing a whole bunch of different ideas, and I think we just got such a cool sort of slate planned, I guess. Yeah, and I think hopefully you guys will like it too. But yeah, when and what, there is no information to be shared at this stage, unfortunately, but yeah, rest assured that it's worth sticking around for the journey, because I think, you know, what's going to be coming for the next year, 2, 3 years, and then if we, you know, when we get to our 20th anniversary, I think we'll have a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, so slightly classic cliche answer, but watch this space because it's going to be well worth watching. But the Audio Imperious snipers are in the trees behind me. If I say too much, that'll be me gone on stream. But yeah, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be very, very cool. So do stick around. Not me remembering the old UI of Jaeger. Yes, I know it was a very cool UI. Very fond of that one. That was a cool UI. But yeah, you know, we've made some changes, and there'll be more changes to come. And not necessarily Jaeger, just mean generally. There'll just be more coming, you know, on lots of different fronts. You're just going to have to see what it is. But I do think that you will be happy with the resulting things. They're all very cool. Okay, so I think we've covered most of this track. I mean, the outro, yes, it's definitely interesting. I'm very interested too. So yeah, do watch this space, and we'll let you know as soon as we can when there is something to share with you guys. But yeah, Audio Imperia has lots and lots of fuel left in the tank. I think let's just say that. So here we go. The outro is pretty much the same as the beginning. And I'm literally using the master fader just to fade this out like you would a track on an album, but it's pretty much the same as the beginning. We have, go back to this, our basses, combination of the photosynthesis and some free vital synths, just doing super basic synth stuff. Nice big trailer hits again. Here we go. Pretty simple. Little distorted hit in there to give it some more crunch. Nice NUCLEUS sub from NUCLEUS. The subs are great. And then we have another hit there, which is kind of in the same space of the sub. Truthfully, probably should have taken one of these out. This is me being a little bit lazy or just not, but they're sort of not fighting too much. Kind of works together, but probably I should have chosen one or the other of these to keep things clean. We're back to our solo violas at the end, just to give it a nice little movement at the end. And then of course we have just a tiny little phrase on the piano to take us out. There we go. So we'll play it through one more time. This was all written with the starter bundle, and like I say, a couple of free soft synths, but just doing basically sub stuff and a little bit of ARP work here and there, supporting or being supported by all the incredible textures of photosynthesis. Where's the main hit from? So do you mean this hit here? Let's just go back and have a little look. This one, I'm presuming. If it was that one, it's from ARTIFACT REANIMATE. It's one of the whoosh hits. I think I have it up here. So there's a whole bunch to choose from. That's cool. Just loads of amazing hits. I actually don't know which one this is. Not that one. Not that one. There's too many to choose from. Oof. There's so many here. So yeah, there's loads of cool whoosh hits. I think that's distorting a bit because it's on the other channel. But yeah, and then you can manipulate them, attacks, release. You can do this cool, really punish them. This may just make them sound crazy. Very cool. I don't even know what happens if you drive this up all the way. Ooh, lots of nice fuzzy textures. I played it on my Devastator ones. Yeah, ARTIFACT REANIMATE. Definitely check it out. If you have it or you're thinking of getting the starter collection, check it out because it's maybe a little bit slept on, but it's got a load of really cool sound design stuff. You can see all the hits with the exception of the NUCLEUS subs or ARTIFACT REANIMATE. It's got a little AI, AR here. And then most of the FX are ARTIFACT REANIMATE as well. So one thing I didn't show you guys, at the end, we have a couple of just cool but generic risers. If you guys don't know what risers are, in trailer music or hybrid music, they come from EDM. It's this rising, usually white noise. Sometimes it can be more designed. It's usually ascending either in pitch or intensity, or the filters opening up to give it more high-end frequency. And it just creates energy at the end of a track or a phrase. So together, I've combined two to make them go like this. So yeah, we've got the kind of movement of one and then the sort of granularity of that one combined with the white noise of that one. And you'll see what they do is at the end of the track, they just add intensity to the end. It gives you the sense that we're getting towards the climax. Without them, we would miss a lot, even if you don't necessarily notice them the first time around. Works fine, but it just really brings us to a kind of crescendo. Very common trailer technique, very common EDM technique, just adds so much kind of texture there. Yes, sort of organic drum slams, yeah, there's maybe not as many as there should be. This one, like I said, this one I like because it was quite organic. It's a nice sort of organic sound. And you can see I've just exported it to audio. I often do that, again, so I can control how much space it takes in the mix. Otherwise, if you leave your drum hits go too long, they'll just sort of drain everything else out and create a lot of mud and, you know, flub and stuff. Controlling them like this makes them much tighter on the kind of downbeats. So I think that's pretty much everything about this track. We've got about 5 more minutes. If you guys have any specific questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them, whether it's about the collection or the libraries in the collection, about the track. You know, I can definitely look at a couple of small bits and pieces in more detail if you do want to look at anything. If not, we'll sort of wrap up in the next few minutes. But I think we've gone through pretty much a deep dive into this. And as I say, I'll definitely make the MIDI available in our Discord in the next 24 hours. I'm also going to try and make the stems available if you guys want to dig in and see the stems. As I say, there is a lot of processing on some of these tracks, but that's more a mixing thing to make everything fit. And as we said, it's just, if you think about, we talk about this in the Modern Composer Blueprint, which, by the way, if you do pick up the starter collection, the Modern Composer Blueprint comes with it. I think I mentioned that at the beginning, but if you are interested in checking out one of our courses, we now have 2. The starter bundle collection also contains the Modern Composer Blueprint. So we've got a lot of new students on there, which is very cool. And I think it's a great, if you're a beginner to this, it's a great introduction. Even if you're more intermediate, it might have some stuff in there that just, you know, is a bit of a primer and a reminder of stuff. So I think it's you know, a really good course to do. But we talk about in the Modern Composer Blueprint the idea of this kind of sonic landscape. This is really important with hybrid and trailer music. You have so much going on, but you only have a certain amount of frequency range, you have a certain amount of volume, and you have a certain amount of sort of depth of timbres that you can have. If you throw everything at it, it's just going to sound like a wall of incomprehensible mess. If you have an orchestra, just an orchestra, nothing else, you hardly have to do any mixing if it's a well-recorded orchestra like NUCLEUS is. Maybe a bit of reverb, maybe a tiny bit of boosting or cutting here and there to get specific sounds. But an orchestra is a self-contained entity, and it's going to sound good pretty much with just good programming. In hybrid music, by the time you've added drums, choirs, guitars, pianos, synths, and goodness knows what else, all of that stuff is not designed in natural life to combine together, right? If you put it all in a room and get people to play, just going to sound incomprehensible. So you have to make more aggressive choices. Most of what I've done here is one of 2 things. It's either a specific sound that I wanted, maybe a bit more reverb or some chorus you can see here. It's adding a tiny bit of low end in places, which is what some of this low end stuff is, or it's just what we call pocketing something. So with a lot of the synths, it's mostly the synths that we have heavy processing on. And it's like the synth is just taking up a lot of space. And in a really sparse arrangement, that would be fine. In a really dense arrangement, it's not going to work because it's fighting the brass, the low hits, it's fighting the strings. So I'm pocketing them. I'm saying, what's really important about the synth? Well, it might just be between 500 and 1200. So do I need anything below that? Probably not. Do I need anything above that? Probably not. So I'll create some quite harsh looking EQ curves, but it works with synths, especially in a dense arrangement. This one actually just has the transient shaper on there. Let's see if I can find one that has a more aggressive EQ curve. Is that the same one again? Watch me just click on the same one 5 times in a row. There you go. This is kind of stuff that I wouldn't tend to do in orchestral music, maybe sometimes, but more often than not, I wouldn't be making aggressive cuts like this. In synths, it makes a lot more sense. And the denser the arrangement, the more you might have to do this. Not all of them are having these kind of big cuts, but a lot of them are having, these are just having some gentle cuts here, I guess. Again, quite a lot of low end cut out of here. Let's take another look at another one. Nothing gone there, but the transient shape. I've gone back to the same one again. I keep going back to the same one. It's like I'm drawn. A lot of it's transient mastering to really shape the attack and release of things so that, because again, you've only got a finite amount of space, so you don't want anything lasting any longer than it has to. If it just flubs out, it's going to obscure something else. So even clicks and clacks, sometimes I'm using transient mastering to just get them a bit shorter so they fit into the mix a bit better. That's very common in epic music and hybrid music. Peter says control releases is important than ever. I agree. It's so important for punchy hits. And Peter, yeah, Peter's ranting. Good. Rant on our Discord, Peter. You're brilliant at this stuff. So help definitely get people to understand in hybrid music and epic music and trailer music. You have to think, it just has to be a lot more arranged. And sometimes you have to do more aggressive mixing and automation and control to really get everything sort of put together. It's also why automation, one thing that used to happen to me is coming back to my sparse sections, suddenly everything is too thin. Yeah, definitely. You often need more than you think you do. Like, for example, this is the quiet section here. But you have trombones like this in the quiet section. They're not crazy loud, but it's like in a pure orchestral setting, that would be like mezzo forte to forte. In this, it's like pianissimo, right? This is quiet, this is barely audible. But it's just because epic music is epic and it has so much going on that even when you don't think you want a quiet section, pretty much everything is going to be mezzo forte and above. So yeah, that's another good technique as well. I'm a certified ranter. Is Transient Master free? I honestly am not sure. I don't think it is. I think it's a native instruments plugin, and I think it's available with things like Complete, or you can buy it separately. What I will say is I'm absolutely sure there are free transient masters out there. I'm not sure, or transient plugins out there. I'm not sure I've ever used a free one, but I'm sure if you type in transient shaper free or something like that, something will come up. They're very common, very highly used, particularly in like EDM, trailer music, stuff like that. Or if you just need to clean certain things up. Transient Master may be free. Honestly, I can't really remember now, but I don't know that it is. But yeah, it's definitely not going to be that expensive. You can get a Transient Master, or you can get something like, for example, Neutron, which again, it's not free, but it's a simple plugin with mostly EQ, but it also has transient shaping in it as well, and some excitement and compression. So I use quite a lot of Neutron. I picked it up in some bundle one day, and it's just become my go-to EQ. It's not the best, but it does what I need to do. Big fan of Kiloheart stuff. Yes, I use their transient shaping as well. Yeah, Kiloheart stuff. So I do have their transient shaper, which I sometimes use. Has a little bit more in terms of controls. Yeah, so you can use that if you want to as well. There we go. So yeah, it's all it's fairly cost effective. Same with the Valhalla plugins. They're usually quite inexpensive too. And of course, key here, our starter bundle. If you are looking for a bunch of really awesome libraries at a crazy price, the starter collection is a good way to go. It's going to give you a full orchestra NUCLEUS, and you can hear what you can do with NUCLEUS alone from some streams ago when we've used it to make stuff from Jurassic Park and so on. Solo is just beautiful for these solo instruments. I mean, I can show you, this is an unprocessed. Let me just make sure we're not peaking or anything here. Let me turn off, I probably got some kind of clipping and stuff going on here. Yeah, let's just take all this off. And same, this French horn. We don't know that one, but yeah, I love solo. Excuse my bad playing. The solo is great. Loads of really cool expressive instruments that are way more useful than just hybrid stuff. Obviously, Cerberus just sounds great. It's pretty much a go-to if you want to do certainly trailer stuff. I think most trailer composers love Cerberus as a layer. It's got a really distinctive sound. It just cuts through. Unlike a lot of libraries, I mean, a lot of music is based around layering, but Cerberus is the ultimate layer. It'll just make anything cut through. Sounds pretty good by itself as well. And then, yeah, of course, photosynthesis. I mean, it's just, even if I take it the vital stuff, it's doing a lot of very cool stuff here. Loads of cool textural stuff. I'm quieter now because I've taken off. So yeah, this is a great collection. Honestly, hopefully this is giving you a little insight into what you can write with this collection for 95% of it. And there was a couple of free synths in there as well. You know what? Something I appreciate about Audio Imperial libraries, having the choice of classical and modern mix is just so convenient. Yeah, it's very cool. It's really useful to have those two mixes. And again, I think something like NUCLEUS just cuts through, unlike a lot of other libraries, particularly in hybrid stuff where you have busy percussion and synths. I just love the sound of NUCLEUS. I mean, listen to it. It's not that many libraries out there that capture that upper dynamic, that real kind of like when brass are playing in a room, it's almost like it's kind of like a ripping sound. You know, it feels like the air is getting ripped. And a lot of libraries don't quite get to that level. You know, they sound beautiful, but they don't quite get to that level. I think NUCLEUS does, and with a little bit of saturation, it sounds great. Oh, and of course, by the way, we have a whole woodwind section in NUCLEUS, which we didn't get to use today. But my highlight of the woodwinds in NUCLEUS is the oboe. This is my go-to oboe. Just take a listen to this. Yeah, let's just do that. Let's just make this a bit louder. Maybe not that loud. Let's go and turn it down. It's such an expressive oboe. I'm not even touching the mod wheel. There's no mod wheel. I'm literally just playing notes, and I'm not a very good player. One of my favorite oboes, hands down. I have quite a few oboes in different libraries. I keep coming back to this one. Perfect combination of like expression, playability, cuts through. NUCLEUS is worth it. Maybe not just for this, but certainly for this. Also, other instruments sound great too. Of course, with solo, we've got all these amazing, beautiful, like English horn and stuff like that. You know what I'm doing. Cool. Yeah. So just giving you a little hint of like what you can do with this, because I don't think this entirely shows off everything that can be done with all this great stuff in the starter collection. So yeah, if you need some libraries, I definitely check this out. You can go over to the website. The link is in the description below. And I will try and make this MIDI available. So if you do pick up the starter collection, you can hopefully just sort of put it together yourself and you know, mix it and see how it all came together. You know, you obviously don't have to do it with Audio Imperial libraries, but it's been designed with them in mind. So I'll make it available. And if you guys do have these libraries or want to check it out, you're more than welcome. It'll be in our Discord if and when I do. Okay, I think we will probably give this a wrap up now. Thank you very much for joining me, guys. We'll go just chatting for a couple of minutes and then we will say goodbye. Cool. So there we go. That's the bundle there. You can see to my left, well, I suppose straight in front of me on the camera. It's a bit weird, but we have NUCLEUS, Solo, CERBERUS, ARTIFACT REANIMATE, PHOTOSYNTHESIS, and KLAVIER. You will get a lot out of those. We've also got the Modern Composer Blueprint. So if you're just starting out or you just want a kind of primer on, it's mostly about scoring for film, but a lot of the techniques in the first few modules, certainly, and the last couple of modules are very much aimed at just general composing too. And there's some theory stuff in there. There's some mixing and mastering stuff in there. There's, a lot of cool stuff. And yeah, it's one of those courses that I think will just sort of grow and grow, hopefully. So if you do want to join us on that, this is a great way to get in on the Maestro course too. Yeah, I think that's everything to say, other than thank you everyone for supporting us on our 10th anniversary. You are all legends for joining us on these streams. If you have our products, if you use our products, if you just join us to hang out and be composers with other composers, we just really appreciate it. Obviously each and every one of you are very important, and it's so much fun doing these streams because it's like we get to hang out now. This is what we want as music makers and composing geeks ourselves. We just want to hang out with other composers and use our instruments to do cool stuff and see how you use them too. So big thank you to everyone that supported us over the last 10 years. We really do appreciate it, and we are only just getting started. I'm absolutely sure of that. So thank you very much. Only missing CERBERUS and ARTIFACT REANIMATE, so maybe I'll consider it. Definitely worth checking out. As I say, I'm sure there are sort of custom prices depending on what you own, and you can always contact customer support and get help there as well. Don't feel afraid to reach out. But yes, well worth having. CERBERUS and ARTIFACT are both great libraries, so you would definitely enjoy having them, I'm sure. Thank you, Peter. Composers don't get to hang out enough. I agree. Yeah, this is I'm so glad that we're doing this because, yeah, as I say, it can always be a bit lonely in your studio dungeons, right? Like making music and not remembering that there's thousands of other composers out there doing the same thing. This is a couple of hours where we get to just have some fun together, remind ourselves there's a big world full of people like us that just love talking about and making music. No problem, guys. Thank you. As I say, thank you all for your support over the years. I've only been here the last couple, but it really has become a little bit of a family, and it's been so great to broaden that family out by doing the live streams. Now I know you guys, I know your names, we talk, whether it's on the Discord or Instagram or whatever. It really is a big part of why I wanted to become, a part of something like Audio Imperia. So yeah, thank you all, guys. Really do appreciate the support. We'll be back next Tuesday. I'm not sure what we'll be doing. We will let you know as soon as possible. As always, if you have any suggestions, anything you'd like to see, put it in the Discord. We are always listening. And if you're not joined up to the Discord, the link should be below. And if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, make sure you do, because if and when we do announce all those great things that we've got lined up, that will probably be the first place to find out about it. So do make sure you're signed up. Just a ton of composers from around the world, right? Composer gang, that's what it's all about. And yeah, it's so great that it's international too, right? I mean, I'm meeting people from all over the world, listening to a lot of cool music on the Discord, or checking your, SoundClouds out. Someone's posted a whole album of music that they've done on our Discord today, or maybe yesterday, I think it was, which I will definitely be checking out tomorrow, probably when I have some time. Really, really is great to hear what you're doing. And always cool when you're using our libraries to do it, because it's an extra kick to hear. And I just love listening and geeking out and hearing like, oh, I heard chorus there, or I heard, Cerberus there or something. So it's always cool when you share stuff you're doing with our libraries. Congratulations. I was here watching, but in the middle of working. Thank you, Caprani. Yeah, no problem. I mean, we just appreciate you hanging out with us. And yes, thank you very much. Like I said, it's been a really cool 10 years. I've only been here for a few years of it, but, I'm sure it's all just getting started. I'm very excited about the future. So I will say goodbye for now. Do keep talking to us. As I said, if you want to know more about the starter collection, links below. If you want to join our Discord and talk to us about anything, please feel free to do so. And in the meantime, guys, happy composing. Whatever you're doing, have a great day. And I shall see you all next Tuesday, if not before, on the Discord. Until then, yeah, have a great day, guys, and great to spend some time with you. Bye, everyone.